On the morning of June 4th, 1942, hundreds of aircraft were being prepared for battle in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Japan had assembled a powerful naval force. Its objective was the tiny American-held atoll of Midway, around 1,300 miles northwest of Hawaii. But unknown to the Japanese commanders, the United States Navy was waiting for them. Just 6 months after Pearl Harbor, the two naval powers were about to fight a battle that would change the direction of the Pacific War. This is a quick run-through of the Battle of Midway. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in December 1941, its aim was to cripple American naval power in the Pacific and give Japan time to establish a defensive perimeter across Asia and the Pacific. In the months that followed, Japanese forces advanced rapidly. Hong Kong, the Philippines, Malaya, Singapore, and the Dutch East Indies fell to Japanese forces. Japan appeared almost unstoppable, but the American Pacific Fleet had survived Pearl Harbor, and its aircraft carriers were still operating. American carrier raids had struck Japanese positions, while the Battle of the Coral Sea in May had prevented Japan from capturing Port Moresby by sea. Japanese Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto therefore proposed an ambitious operation. The target was Midway Atoll. Yamamoto hoped that capturing Midway would strengthen Japan's position in the Pacific. More importantly, he believed an attack would draw the remaining American aircraft carriers into a decisive battle where they could be destroyed. The Japanese plan involved several forces spread across thousands of miles of ocean, including an invasion force, a carrier striking force commanded by Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, and a main fleet commanded by Yamamoto. The Japanese expected surprise, but there was one major problem. The Americans knew they were coming. American codebreakers had been working to understand Japanese naval communications. At Station Hypo in Hawaii, cryptanalysts were making significant progress against the Japanese naval code JN-25. By the spring of 1942, they had determined that the Japanese were planning a major operation against a location referred to as AF. But American commanders needed to know what AF meant, so Midway transmitted a message reporting that its water distillation system had broken down and that the island was running short of fresh water. Japanese communications were then intercepted, reporting that AF was suffering from a shortage of fresh water. AF was Midway. American intelligence was also able to estimate the date of the attack and gather information about the Japanese forces involved. This gave Admiral Chester Nimitz, commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, something extremely valuable: time. Instead of sailing blindly into a Japanese ambush, the Americans could prepare one of their own. 3 American carriers were available: Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown. Yorktown had been badly damaged during the Battle of the Coral Sea. American shipyard workers worked around the clock and returned her to service in just days. Meanwhile, Midway itself was strengthened with additional aircraft, marines, artillery, and defensive positions. Before dawn on June 4th, Nagumo's 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, launched aircraft towards Midway. The Japanese attack was powerful. American fighters rose to meet them while anti-aircraft guns opened fire. The Japanese heavily damaged the airfield and other installations. But Midway had not been destroyed, and, crucially, Japanese reconnaissance had not yet located the American carriers. Nagumo now faced a difficult decision. Some aircraft were being prepared for another attack on Midway, while reports suggested that American ships might be nearby. Japanese aircraft were being refueled, rearmed, and moved around the carrier decks. Then the American attacks began. Torpedo bombers flew towards the Japanese carriers at low altitude. Many never returned. The torpedo squadron suffered devastating losses and achieved little direct success. But their attacks forced Japanese fighters to concentrate on defending the fleet, while American dive bombers approached from much higher altitude. At around 10:20 in the morning, American dive bombers attacked. Aircraft from Enterprise and Yorktown struck Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu. The result was devastating. The carriers were left burning and fatally damaged. Their aircraft, fuel, and ammunition made the fires extremely difficult to control. Within minutes, 3 of Japan's 4 frontline carriers had been fatally damaged. But the battle was not over. The surviving Japanese carrier, Hiryu, launched attacks against the Americans. Its aircraft found Yorktown. Dive bombers badly damaged the carrier, and a later torpedo attack left her in sinking condition. For a time, it appeared that Japan might still recover. But American aircraft found Hiryu. Later that afternoon, American dive bombers attacked. Hiryu was hit repeatedly and left burning and mortally damaged. By the end of June 4th, all 4 of Japan's frontline fleet carriers had been fatally damaged. The Japanese invasion of Midway could no longer proceed as planned. Without the carrier air power needed to protect the operation, Yamamoto's fleet could not achieve its objective. The invasion was abandoned. The battle did not end immediately. American aircraft continued attacking Japanese ships as the fleet withdrew. The heavy cruiser Mikuma was sunk while Mogami was badly damaged. Yorktown was still afloat, but on June 6, the Japanese submarine I-168 torpedoed Yorktown and the destroyer Hamon. Yorktown finally sank the following morning. The United States lost a carrier and a destroyer, along with 307 personnel killed. Japan lost 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, as well as the heavy cruiser Mikuma. Japan also lost hundreds of aircraft and many experienced naval aviators and maintenance personnel. Most of Japan's carrier pilots survived Midway. The greater long-term problem was the loss of 4 carrier air groups, their aircraft and the carriers themselves, assets that Japan would struggle to replace. Midway did not immediately end Japanese power in the Pacific. Japan still possessed a formidable navy and enormous territories across Asia and the Pacific, but the strategic situation had changed. Before Midway, Japan had been expanding. After Midway, that expansion was increasingly halted. Japan had failed to capture Midway, while the United States was rapidly expanding its industrial and military capacity. Just 2 months after Midway, American forces landed on Guadalcanal. The Pacific War was entering a new phase. Japan was no longer simply advancing across the Pacific. It was increasingly being forced to defend the territory it had already conquered. The Battle of Midway is sometimes described simply as a victory won by American codebreakers. Intelligence was crucial. Knowing where and when the Japanese were coming allowed Nimitz to position his carriers for an ambush. But intelligence alone did not win the battle. American commanders still had to make difficult decisions. Pilots had to find the Japanese fleet, and dive bomber crews had to locate their targets and press home their attacks. Midway was therefore the result of intelligence, preparation, leadership, training, and the actions of thousands of sailors and airmen on both sides. For Japan, it was a devastating strategic setback. For the United States, it was a crucial victory at a moment when the outcome of the Pacific War was still uncertain. The war was far from over. But after Midway, the direction of the Pacific War had changed. Japan's strategic momentum had been broken, and the United States had begun taking the offensive. The Battle of Midway had become one of the great turning points of the Second World War. If you enjoyed this quick run-through of the Battle of Midway, please like and subscribe for more concise history explainers.